everyone and hello. Welcome to the Chiranjeev Gurukul Sammelan. This time's topic is celebrating environment and sustainability. So as we do always, we should start with our invocation mantra. We will start with 3 Omkar followed by the mantra. Please close your eyes. We shall start. Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste everyone. Welcome once again. So today's topic of Sammelan is celebrating environment and sustainability. It was in the first Earth Summit of 1972 that there was declaration that was set out for the principles of preservation and enhancement of human environment. But of course, no guesses that our scriptures have been talking about it since time immemorial. So I would request our moderator, Mr. Chiranjeev Verma, who is a freelance corporate trainer and a career counselor, and most importantly, a farmer at heart, and extremely passionate about organic farming, to please come and start the Sammelan. Over to you, Chiranjeev.
Thank you, Upasana. Namaste, everyone. Good evening. I hope you all are doing good. So, thank you, Upasana, first of all, for stressing on the point of the first Earth Summit 1972, the point of conserving the environment, and of course, hinting at the point that there must be something in the Indian scriptures also about this. But is there just about conserving and preserving in the Indian scriptures, or is there anything about it? As the topic for today's Sammelan suggests, when it comes to the ancient Indian wisdom, it is celebrating environment. And that is so aptly being chosen as the title of today's summit. When it comes to ancient Indian wisdom, or the eternal Indian wisdom, as better pointed out by Rajesh a few days ago, it is about celebrating environment, or being in the environment and being the environment in oneself. And this actually is indicated very rightly with a really pertinent shloka from Vrikshayaveda. And that shloka is Dashkup Samavapi, Dashvapi Samoha Nadraha, Dashah Nadraha Samah Putro, Dashputro Samodramuh, which means about 10 wells equals 1 step well. About 10 step wells equal 1 pond. About 10 ponds equal 1 sun. And it takes about 10 suns equivalence in terms of loyalty, respect, and value creation for the next generation to create the value creation, loyalty, and respect given by one tree. Stresses so much, so brilliantly from Vriksha Ayurveda about the importance of one tree, and hence stresses on the importance of environment in our learnings. And that is why we always talk about stressing on the importance of what we have around us and aligning ourselves with that. One more important thing that the eternal Indian wisdom talks about and it teaches us is that no learning is just learning theoretically. It stresses once again on the importance of not just theoretical learning, but also practical implementation of it. Like, for example, in Kautilya Arthashastra, we learn about Prajna Guna, which talks about receiving information, receiving the knowledge, absorbing it, retaining it to the maximum possible level, experimenting it or finding its practical implementation around us, and finding the relevant bits, not giving up on the learning until we actually apply it in actual work. Similarly, on this topic of nature, environment, we have today some people from various walks of life, some of whom can talk a lot about how nature is important and what nature has in store for us, and how nature is mentioned in the ancient Indian wisdom, Bhartiya Shaastra. And some of them who have walked the talk, with or without knowing the bits from the eternal Indian wisdom, they have actually found its practical implementation and are doing amazing work in their respective fields. So I would like to welcome over here our three panelists for the talk today, who will talk about how environment is kind of already embedded in eternal Indian wisdom and what we can do taking both of these forward for the times to come. We have with us today Mr. Ghúryé, who is, of course, in my personal words, he's a wizard in astrology and Vastu Shastra. I respect him a lot because of his knowledge about various aspects of eternal Indian wisdom. He applies that when he helps corporate as well as individuals in navigating through the glitches of astrology, or giving them the right insights, the right consultation through the business astrology. We have with us a brilliant veterinarian doctor, Dr. Shantanu, who is, in my opinion, always riding on an emergency, who's always running for an emergency. And right now also, he's joining us from a place which is actually going to get bombarded very soon with cyclone or turbulence or whatnot. But he's still joining us from there. And we have with us Gaurav Nalkur, who is actually touching so many lives, not just in urban area, but also in the areas where wildlife actually prospers, who touches the lives of many people who live and who face the heat of so much manipulation of environment that is happening around us and is being created by us. So he can tell us the tales of what is happening in the ecology, in the wildlife. So we have with us a business astrologer, a vet, as well as an ecotourism expert with us to talk about what is there in the ancient Indian wisdom about environment and how it is being implemented on the ground. Welcome, Anandji. Namaste. Welcome, Shantanu. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome, Gaurav. It's a delight. It's a sure delight for you to join us, all three of you. So, to start with, may I call Anandji, because my questions actually are maybe emerging from the past or maybe from the present, but are very much on the context setting stage still. Okay. So my question for Anandji first is, so you have walked through various facets of life. You've been an engineer, and you have now been working as an astrologer, business astrologer and consultant for many corporates for many years. What has been your opinion about what is there in store in Bhartiya Shastra about nature? Because the kind of work that you do, I see that it's a lot related to what is there in the orbits, what is there in the planetary positions in the universe, which is untamable. We keep talking about nature being, manipulated by the mankind for many ages, but there is something in the cosmos which is untamable, and you talk about that. Is there something in Bharti Shastra that we can learn about nature and environment? Your points on this. We wish you could unmute Anandji. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, Chitra, you have been really kind in introducing me. Very nice words. Thank you for that. Two things here. First is about the label astrologer. In general, the moment the word astrologer is uttered, we go to fortune telling, which is unfortunate, because astrology in Indian context has much larger meaning. If you want to study any subject, it has got minimum 6 aspects, which are Shiksha,
Okay.
Chanda, Nirukta, Vyakaran, Jyotish, and Kalpa. Here, the Jyotish, which we translate as astrology, actually it means the core knowledge. Jyoti Isha. Jyoti means knowledge, and Isha means Icha, to get that knowledge. So the core knowledge of any subject is called as Jyotish. And that is translated or mistranslated into English as astrology, which is only related to planetary movements and stuff like that. So what is that astrology itself? That is defined as Agni Purva Rupam, Aditya Uttara Rupam, Apa Sandhi, Vaidyuta Sandhanam, Adi Jyotisham. That is, sun is over there, its Rupa over here is Agni. The connection is through Apa, ether, Apa Sandhi, Vaidyuta Sandhanam, and the connection is made through that electricity or Bijli. And the study of relationship of all these and these is called as Jyotisha. So in that sense,
amazing.
Yeah, in that sense, all the objects that are there on Earth, amongst us, we ourselves, and the planets, and the sun, and the universe, all are interconnected, and all are to be studied under Jyotish. So it is a very, very wide term. Now, what does it say about nature and nature conservation? The very thing that our wisdom says, that the world started with the golden egg, the Hiranyagarbha. And this is very interesting, because what that implies and directly implies is that the whole world, animate objects, inanimate objects, trees, flora and fauna, human beings, everybody is included in that Hiranyagarbha, or that golden egg.
Right.
That means we are a part of the overall universe and not on top of it. We are one of that. And that is why, if we are going to do anything that hurts that golden egg, it is actually hurting ourselves, because we are a part.
Indeed.
And we are not at top. So it is not for our enjoyment. We are there, we are enjoying ourselves. Anandam Brahma. The enjoyment itself is bliss, but that enjoyment must come without exploitation. And as Bhagwan Buddha also has said, it is the Madhyam Marga. That it is not exploitation, it is enjoyment, it is bliss. It is using what you require and being a conduit so that the rest also enjoy. If the rest do not enjoy, sometime or other it is going to come back to us, because we are a part and parcel.
Yes.
And this is the main idea from Indian wisdom that I would like to put forth.
So rightly said. I mean, there are so many messages already coming out of so less of your talking, Anandji. We would like to hear more from you on this. Really, we didn't want you to stop, but the most importantly, enjoying without exploitation. I mean, in my opinion, immediately I picked it up as a message for everybody around us. What an important message. Exploit, do not exploit. Enjoy without exploiting. And so beautifully you connected everything, which made me kind of think that, okay, we are a part of the golden egg, a part of the universe. We are not at the top. And when we are going to manipulate it, we are going to, destroy it, it is going to come back hurting us, because it is the same universe where we are doing all this. Does it come back to us? It does. It does big time. And this can actually be talked about. This can actually be talked about by, I'm sure at least Dr. Shantanu can talk about this in more than one examples. And he's the better person to talk about, to give us the example about how this is actually coming back to us. Dr. Shantanu, ladies and gentlemen, is a vet working in the field of rescuing marine life, as well as in many cases wildlife, as I've studied about his profile as well. He is someone who has started as a vet on call, and now he is actually working with startups as well as a freelancer. Right now, where he is, it's an interesting part. I want him to talk about it first, and then let us connect how Anandji's point actually is something which Dr. Shantanu is facing right now. Dr. Shantanu, can you come on the mic and talk about where you are right now, and is what Anandji talking about actually something which you are right now living and facing and seeing?
So I'm currently in Gujarat. I'm here because we are setting up a marine service for the state. We run this marine service. It's a marine veterinary service for animals that wash ashore in different conditions, so either alive or dead. And we, when they're dead, we try and find out what caused the death, and if they're alive, we treat, rescue, and release. Right now, we came here on an emergency because in the last 3 days, because the cyclone has been heading this way, a lot of animals that like a lot of marine animals have been washed ashore. Normally, this doesn't really happen if they are in the wild. This wouldn't happen unless they were sick or dying, or there was some major natural disaster that happened, like an undersea earthquake that can cause disruptions in magnetic patterns. But a large number of the cases now that come in are animals that have been entangled in fishing net or that have ingested plastic. And so when they get entangled in nets, they can't get past the currents and the waves, and so they get pushed further and further ashore and then can't get back. So we have had, in the last day and a half, we've had more than 5 separate cases of dolphins, porpoises, and this is just dolphins and porpoises, but an unknown number of turtles have washed up as well. So we're on our way out to the coast. We're going to be driving up and down, picking these animals up, cutting the nets off. If they need treatment, taking them in for treatment. We've set up a few transit centers up and down the coast and releasing them back into the wild. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing at the moment.
That's kind of disturbing to listen to first, Shantanu, and at the same time, tremendous respect to you for always being on the run, rescuing the animals from wherever at present marine life. A little about your life also, Shantanu. A little curious I became when I read about you, I learned about you. You chose to be a vet, right?
Yeah.
then there are, of course, I mean, conventionally speaking, popularly speaking, more, more acceptable, more higher choices considered to be an MBBS or someone treating human beings. What made you choose treating animals? What was there? Was there any thought behind this, or anything that you would like to share on that?
I was always keen on wildlife and animals in general. I've mostly wildlife. I've been working with animals, and I started off working at the snake park when I was 12 years old in Pune at Kathraj. Then I went on to working with camps, doing these camps with, say, pug marks and nature trails and things growing up. And then, but wherever I was, I always knew that, if something went down, it was always either a doctor or a vet that knew what had to be done. And being a vet, it's a whole range of different species that you can handle. So it gives you a
Yeah.
lot more. You can handle a lot more stuff, and it kind of gave me a basis to work on. And so I started up working with. Actually, I started working with terrestrial animals. I started working with tigers and elephants in Bandipur. Not just
Oh,
that,
yes.
but a lot of different wildlife, smaller wildlife. And after 3.5 years of quite some real crazy encounters, I moved
I'm
up
sure that was.
and I set up this marine project for Karnataka and the West Coast now. And while I was doing that, I was unfortunately, being a vet in the wildlife sector, there's no money in it at all. So I set up a small startup called Supertails. It's called Supertails now, but it was called Dial-A-Vet back then, where people could call in and get veterinary advice over the phone.
Yes.
And now we are a team of 280 people and 22 vets, and we manufacture and dog food and all kinds of things.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's with an e-commerce platform, but then that kind of pays and allows me to do all the work that I'm currently doing.
So it's basically interesting. Why? Because it started from the thought of you pursuing your likeness. Basically, you like being in the wild, you like being with the creatures, and you started with the snake park. And sometime during this explanation, you mentioned that when they needed help, you always saw a doctor, either a doctor or a vet coming in. Any kind of, whether it is human being or an animal, needed help, there was always either a doctor or a vet coming in. I
Yes.
sense that there was some sort of value that you found in that kind of a work. There may have been, of course, emotional thought behind this, or you saw a logical point that, yes, they would need help, so let me be the one.
Looking back at it, I actually don't know why I chose to do this specifically. It would have been much easier to just study biology and get into this, but the thing is that I knew that being as a vet, I could go and travel anywhere in the world and I'd find work, which is not as
Yeah.
easy as if I had just studied biology. I've also, I was in New Zealand for a very long time, and I worked with a clinic and stuff, and so I worked as a nurse for a long time while I was, studying, while I was doing my BSc. I studied my degree in biology as well, but I saw vets occupying a niche that not very many other people could get into. And the thing is that, say, like looking at the way the world is going and the way climate is changing and all these things, at the end of the day, being a vet or a doctor or in like in a very practical kind of field where you're helping others, you always will have that niche for yourself.
Niche for yourself. Fine, I get it. In fact, since I also happen to uh, do career counseling for youngsters, there is some list of elements that we see in the students who are aspiring to become either medical practitioner for human beings or animals. That element of having the sense to rescue them, to treat them is always there. And you bringing the logic of always finding your niche is so very well balanced now. Having the emotion to treat and also finding the work and be having your own niche.
It's also really funny because when I was about 13, I went to a career counselor because I never passed an exam until I don't even remember when. I just about got through school, and so my mom sent me to this career counselor, and we did this aptitude test, and it said like veterinarian, marine biologist, and marine engineer. So I did the first two. So
Awesome. Shantanu, your work you started saying that you also worked for about 3.5 years in the terrestrial, with the terrestrial animals like tigers and elephants. And I've seen your work in a pretty detailed way through your social media posts as well. And you talk, in detail about many elephants being brought from the temples to rescue. This was a little surprising for me that why would an animal be required to be rescued from a temple? And then you have emphasized on what actually happens with them, how their health actually deteriorates there. Have you never faced any kind of opposition from those who are pretty religious kind of people, the communities back there who actually want the elephants to be located there, brought up back to the temples? And you actually profess a lot about elephants being brought from the temples and released into the wilds. What have your thoughts been around this?
So so a lot of the animal and like elephants that come from temples, you can't release back into the wild. Most of them have grown up in captivity. They aren't wild as such anymore, but they have gone through, a lot of training and this thing, and they tend to be a lot more comfortable around humans. So if these animals are released into the wild, they will come back usually and cause conflict because people, would end up injuring them, or they would end up injuring people. I personally do not believe elephants should be in captivity in temples. Maybe it made sense once upon a time. They were religious symbols. You had systems in place. Temples were much larger complexes where they had space to move and walk about and exhibit natural behavior as well. You'd have paddocks where they could move around, orchards where they could feed. Unfortunately, temples now, all the temples that these elephants tend to be in are in the middle of urban areas. There's no place for them to move. They aren't walked at all. They stay in one space on cement floors, which they're not designed to be standing on. Their feet are always wet because, you wash that floor, it doesn't dry up. They're kept indoors. They are fed all kinds of rubbish. Like everyone wants to give an elephant a banana, so most of these elephants that are in captivity are obese. And obesity and then standing in one place all the time, it leads to a lot of arthritis and foot problems. And so you have lameness, as a very large cause of death in elephants. There's so many problems that come about, and maybe these things worked a long time ago, but now it just doesn't. I can't reconcile keeping elephants in captivity unless you're able to provide those aspects of things, which no temple will do. And unfortunately,
you mean to say the natural environment that used to be there probably much years before,
a long time ago. And in the recent past, at least with the elephants that we've got out of temples, the biggest reason why we find a lot of flack getting these elephants away, despite the fact that they're in terrible condition, and it costs lakhs and lakhs of rupees annually to take care of these animals just for the medicines. Like we spend about 1.5 lakhs on joint supplements for some of these elephants, so for each elephant, and we've got 5 elephants in this rescue center that we take care of. But the biggest problem with taking elephants away is that they are a very large revenue stream for temples. And so our biggest pushback is from temple management, who say, sorry, we make about 30 to 40 lakhs in revenue from every elephant that's here. So why should we give you an elephant? So that is
somehow this still is sounding similar to Anandji's point, which he had opined a few minutes ago, mentioning that there should be enjoyment, but without exploitation. This sounds something like that, exploitation happening. But still, since this is related to, there's this cultural angle to it, I would like to go back to Anandji on this point. Temples having elephants being brought for treatment, and then temples asking elephants back there. This could be related to cultural sentiments or maybe religious sentiments. Does this not sound contrary to the culture, especially for some states down south, where elephants are actually kept for giving blessings? And like Shantanu is saying, probably they are also giving revenues to the temples. But even with that point aside also, is this something actually mentioned in our scriptures or our shastras that elephants should be used for such customs, or is there any process like this? Anything that you could throw light
on? First thing is, earlier on, the temples used to be the center of economic activity. So, for example, if a person wanted to light a diya in the temple every day in his name, what he would do is he would back calculate, is this much ghee would be required, for that this much milk would be required, for that this many cows will be required, and he would donate that many cows to the temple. The temple would give those cows to a person in the next village. It is called as Panchakroshi. And that person would tend to those cows, and every day or every second day would bring in that much ghee to the temple to light that diya. And now you see, this is, if after 2 years or 3 years, if the cows increase, it is his benefit. He can give this much to the temple and rest he can keep. If the cows decrease, that is his problem. But if he is not able to do that job anymore, he can give back those cows to the temple, and the temple can give those cows to somebody else. So the whole economic activity in the Panchakroshi would be given, would be rejuvenated, or would be because of this temple. The temples also were tax collectors, because as we see, giving money in a temple is much easier than giving to any agency, as it is. So the whole thing was, and in fact what they say is, the temples came first. Today, as we see, we do not see the Rajwada of kings, but we see the temples made by them. So the temples were made to be permanent structures, and our temples had thousands of acres of land in those days, given as inam by the local ruler or whatever. So as he pointed out, yes, in those days we had an environment where the elephant could be tended to, and that elephant could be kept in an environment which is suitable to it. Today, I will draw a parallel that the society that I stay in, it is all multi-story buildings, and several people have dogs at home. These dogs are called in for children's enjoyment, but children basically outgrow them. And I see every day the dogs which come out, which are of higher breeds like Alsatian, Bulldog, and so on, they have become overweight, if not obese. They don't even want to walk. They come out, go someplace and just sit. And then they walk back, and they have all sorts of elements that Shantanu talked about, like the joint pains and overweight problems and whatnot. So this is where, for our enjoyment, we are exploiting the animal. But which was not there, it was not meant to be that. In earlier days, say about 400 years ago, 500 years ago, the elephant was considered to be one of the greatest assets a king would have, and it would be tended to in a best of fashion. It was used in wars, It was used in peace times. It was used for moving wooden logs in a jungle. It had many utilities. It was a part of that cycle. Now
Wow.
somewhere that cycle is broken, and with the cycle and the pattern being broken, it can only be used on the cement blocks or cement floor for getting elms and becoming a source of income for the temple, which again is not having, I mean, which many of its sources of income have been blocked. So it is a totally
Right.
different cycle that we have set into motion, and we are responsible for that.
So, brilliant point once again, Anandji. You beautifully explained the cycle of ghee, first of all, and then uh, the way today economy is still being thought about, but the cycle is absent. I think this is the message that we get out of this, and the example of dogs and multi-story buildings is all making sense, and it's something which we need to understand that we may be following the same process, but only the half of it, not the complete. So the elephants, or for that matter, any animal, has to be kept in their natural habitat is the most important thing. That will complete the cycle. This brings me to the point of you also mentioning kings actually tending to the elephants, which is brilliantly, used as a term in eternal Indian wisdom as a seva of all the creatures that are around. So in our living philosophy study group, our captain, Rajesh ji, generally talks about prosperity is not just for one or two or at least the organization of human beings. It is for the whole set of creatures who are affected because of our activities. So if whether it is a talk about temple or any other department, whoever is getting affected is actually a part of your ecosystem. So thank you so much for mentioning this, Anandji, this important thing about elephants, temples, all getting connected now. Now, since you mentioned about economy, and it actually brings me to the point wherein I really want to bring our third panelist on board. And economy is something which a particular sector in India actually is either thriving or at least beginning to get the prominence, and that sector is the sector of tourism. And this sector has also an angle of being conventional, an angle of being out of the box. So, ladies and gentlemen, Gaurav is actually one such amazing personality who belongs to the sector of, you can say, wildlife tourism or ecotourism, as he is aspiring to become a specialist into it. Gaurav, I have a question for you. When there is conventionally more money into the the tourism that is seen in hotels and resorts, you chose ecotourism or wildlife tourism to start with. What made you do that? Was
Uh,
there any emotion behind this, or was there any initial thought that you are also a bird watcher that way? So anything that you can share with us about that?
Thanks a lot for that question. So I would say that my journey has been kind of similar to Shantanu's in that, I've been someone been interested in wildlife and bird watching from a young age. And, later on professionally for my master's, I got into wildlife science, research biology actually. So I've actually worked for a few years as a wildlife biologist. I've worked on the field, researching giant squirrels and birds in the Himalayas and things like that. And
Amazing.
like how Shantanu said, seeing vets and doctors, I kind of had a similar revelation in that I was interacting with local communities a lot because a lot of these places were around villages. And I realized that saving wildlife, which is what I got into, why I got into this, is not going to be possible until people are made aware of what is around them. Scientists and researchers and all can work all day long, but as long as the common man doesn't have an appreciation for nature, they, all their most of their work will be in vain. So that was kind of the reason why I got into tourism, ecotourism especially, to use wildlife tourism as a sort of awareness tool, you can say. So,
Oh,
whether I want to take people into someplace like a national park and, show them the amazing wildlife that our country has, or even, even dispel myths. So, for example, there are times when tree plantation is not actually a good idea, or a lot of our so-called eco-friendly standards are things from the West, which are great there, but they don't work with our climate and our conditions. And
I agree.
working during my training, I'm currently training to be formally training to be an ecotourism specialist, and a lot of this has been with local communities. And there is a lot of traditional knowledge which is, since it's traditional and since it's been going on in our country for hundreds of thousands of years, it's well suited for our climate. It's well suited for the conditions. Perhaps some of it has to be tweaked because the environment is not, the state of environment is not what it was 200, 300 years ago. So some of it has to be modified. But much of the traditional knowledge is actually perfect for adapting, perfect for turning into standards that can be used for India and countries like India.
Zabardast, superb. In fact, now, Gaurav, a slight bit of complaint to you. Why? Because when we have been discussing about your work, your line of work, and trying to connect it with the eternal Indian wisdom, you have very cleverly always said that I don't know anything about eternal Indian wisdom or Shastra or any way. But you have always been subscribing to the traditional ways of the local communities there. And so where does this traditional knowledge in the local community come from? And you just mentioned hundreds and thousands of years of them living in those conditions, understanding those conditions in depth, and whether they're having any scriptures, literature or not, they actually know it all.
Yeah, definitely.
Where does our Shastra come from? From the knowledge of so many rishis of, so many ages, they also knowing by watching so many natural processes, starting from what's happening in the universe and not even ending on what's happening in the soil. So you have been interestingly learning from the local communities who have been learning from the nature, who have been learning in the traditional ways, and you want people to accept that, which is why you got into ecotourism.
Yeah. So ecotourism and wildlife tourism are kind of they're used quite interchangeably. But now with the modern definition of ecotourism, it also includes traditional communities and traditional aspects as well. So things
Okay.
like homestays and traditional meals and traditional arts and crafts. So one thing I really want to tell is, for those of you who love traveling, I just want to say the experiences that you're going to get from a local homestay or staying in an eco lodge are going to be so much richer than some place where you stay in a five-star hotel with a pool.
Wow, what a thought. What a thought, Gaurav, because I know somehow this also relates with the point of sustainability, which is also a part of our topic.
Definitely.
Does it? Would you like
Yeah.
to throw a light on this rather than me?
So a lot of the hotels and resorts that we have, they have this process called greenwashing. I won't say all of them, but many of them do. So greenwashing, I'll just explain, is when you kind of portray something as environmentally friendly and sustainable when it's actually not. So whether they're doing
Oh,
this deliberately, to attract more people, or whether they're doing it unknowingly, because like I said, a lot of our standards over the years have been adapted from countries that do not have the same environmental or climatic conditions as us. So for example, there was this hotel that had entirely glass facade and all that, and it was claimed to be environmentally friendly because they used less energy, and it was all on paper. What happens is these kind of standards come from the US, where more money is spent on heating, and
Yeah,
when you have a glass facade that draws in heat, you don't need to spend that much energy and money and resources on heating. Whereas in India, you have a glass facade, you're going to spend maybe 3 or 4 times that energy on air conditioning. So
absolutely.
so it's not just, so again, I would say this is unintentional greenwashing, but it's greenwashing all the same.
And the way this is kind of marketed for the general public is so many views at this corner or the other corner. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful view from your window. You'll get that a lot. People go for that rather than living in a hut and enjoying the natural breeze there.
I mean, if you're staying close to nature, you're going to get amazing views all around you. So, I mean, if you're looking at it that way, that is the simplest thing. And it's no longer a case that, homestays are very basic things with no bathrooms and, dirty floors and everything. I am working currently with a lot of communities, and I'm working with a lot of NGOs that are helping train communities build proper homestays that have all the modern facilities, but doing this, of course, in a sustainable and responsible manner.
Wow, what a beautiful way to say Atithi Devo Bhava is also being taught to the local community so that their sustainability models could also be seen by the people who are traveling to those places,
And
isn't it?
yeah, and I mean, this also goes on my goal of awareness, because local communities are being made aware of all the amazing opportunities that are there around them, without having to exploit enjoyment without exploitation, like Anandji said. People are becoming, so people in, for example, hill communities, where
Yes.
they used to move away to the nearest city, or they'd get into timber or quarry mining or something like that, which is exploitation. Now they're discovering that there are people who want to travel to their area for bird watching and photography, so they're becoming bird guides or wildlife guides, or they're opening up homestays. They had a piece of land that was not doing anything, so now they've turned that into a beautiful homestay. And it's a very responsible way of increasing improving the economic condition of rural communities as well.
That's it. That's correct. All the dots of the sustainability equation for me. Gaurav, thank you so much for pointing it out. You
Thanks a lot.
actually emphasized on the point of completing the cycle that Anandji opined on. I mean,
May I add
yes,
something here?
yes, please.
See, the entire Shastra of Vastu Shastra or erection of buildings is based on what is today called as biomimicry. If in the jungle,
Okay.
if you see a varul or ant hill,
Yeah.
the principles that are used by ants are exactly replicated in the Vastu Shastra. So, for example, in a ant hill, if you see an ant hill next time, look for the Ishan cone. That will be the lowest point of that whole place. The walls on the south and west would be very heavy, and it would be designed in such a way that air keeps circulating in that varul, to the extent that the inside temperature is almost 10 to 15 degrees below the temperature outside. And this is not done by water, this is just done by air ventilation. And these are the ants who are doing it.
Without any air conditions.
Without any air conditioning. And this is exactly what has been described by Maya Rakshas, who was the father-in-law of Ravana, or who himself was a what you call as architect, he has described in his magnum opus Mayamatam, which for a long time did not get translated. Then it seems it got translated into German and then to English, or French and then to English. And now today, architectural courses are learning from it. And in fact, that one that talks about wooden buildings 34 stories tall,
Oh my
which we
God.
don't see anywhere. But how to construct it, what joint should be used, what kind of wood should be used. And one of the main points that it makes is all the material that is required to be used for the temple or that place or location be local.
Has to be local.
Has to be local. Other than
Wow.
the DT itself, the stone used for DT could be from other place. But other than that, everything that is used in the temple has to be locally supplied or locally taken up. And if you see today, some survey was done in Bandra for multi-story buildings, and this person found out that in his office building there was not a single thing which had come from Mumbai or around,
Yeah.
including the floors, including electrical switches, including machines, including walls, including every single thing, the doors and so on had come from a long distance. And this is what
Yes.
is, I would believe, is environment unfriendly.
Unfriendliness. Yes.
Because on one side you are spending so much on the transportation, on the other side you are using materials where they need not be used. Like he pointed out, Gaurav pointed out about the glass facade. We are using it where it is not needed. And in fact, it is a problem,
Yeah.
because then we are putting in AC and taking in more energy rather than reducing the need for the energy.
So rightly put.
Yeah, as far as Vastu Shastra is concerned, yes, it is 100% econo-friendly or environment friendly.
So in fact, I would like to combine both of your points, Gaurav and Anandji. There is a lot of value in having things locally made, locally procured, and that is just the beginning of having everything environment friendly. So if one had to now really look forward to what we can learn from our culture or our Bhartiya Shastra, and how we can implement it, and take learnings from Shantanu and Gaurav, and take their own efforts, decide about what they can do in the line of being environment friendly. I think there's this one message is of undoing the manipulation that we have been doing, or going back to, or maybe sending back those who have been brought from distant places, from their places which actually were their home, well, be it a creature or a human being or a thing also, has to be sent back to their original place, and things locally made to be used as much as possible. And once again, going deeper into this, I also realized that something which Anandji had said some time back when I was speaking to him, leaving things as it is, rather than trying to modify, manipulate, trying to let the nature be on its own and we aligning to it, rather than we modifying it according to our wishes. And that is something which we have seen being managed because of the deterioration that has happened in the environment, managed by Dr. Shantanu and Gaurav, by means of propagating their thoughts to the public and rescuing the animals. So going forward, if I have to pick up one message from each, I would like to go to Dr. Shantanu first. Based on your work, the kind of work that you do, and the kind of manipulation that you see, which is resulting into so much happening to the wildlife or the marine life, do you want to give any message which people can take up and start undoing, or start doing seva, or try to complete their own sustainability equation or anything on that line. Do you wish to convey anything to the general public?
For sure, I think there is unfortunately not a lot of awareness about a lot of the issues that animals in captivity deal with, whether it's elephants or I think recently, I think everyone watched Blackfish or has heard about Blackfish. So, people tend not to go and visit places where there are marine mammals in captivity. Now it's the, viewership and the visitor numbers have dropped. But it's the same thing with elephants. And unfortunately, cinema and a lot of cinema, and especially recently, with the Elephant Whisperer and things, a lot of people believe that elephants in I'm going to keep this to just elephants, but a lot of people believe that elephants should stay in captivity, or the idea of elephants being in captivity is romanticized a lot in a lot of our, in books, in movies, in a lot of different, what you call it,
stories and
so it's the unfortunate. So, but the thing is that it's seen from the point of view of the humans involved. It's never about the animal in the equation, and a lot of these animals go through a lot of torture and trauma, throughout their lives. For example, in this movie, The Elephant Whisperer, which won the Oscar, and there's thousands of people, millions of people have watched it. And now we have we've seen a surge in tourism to places like Kerala and Tamil Nadu to see elephants in captivity. And no one really talks about what happened to those elephants at the end of the movie. They're taken away and they enter a training process called Fajan, where they are beaten and tortured and broken until they learn to obey. Otherwise you wouldn't have elephants saying yes and patting your head when you walk into a temple.
Oh my God.
So it's just read, like, the message would be maybe read up a little bit about what happens to elephants in these settings that makes them that makes them an attraction. See what the issues are before you actually go there and want to see them. Because the thing is that, like, even zoos, for example, unfortunately, zoos were supposed to be built at one point in time for conservation and education. I don't think India has any educational aspect to zoos, that you couldn't learn from reading a book. It's just be aware of what you're going to see, and read about the other side of things, and and don't look at animals just as a source of entertainment. So I think that would be
there's a message, like, rather than looking at them through television screens, if you want to see them, go into their places and see them, and that would make more sense. And that should not be the captivity, that should be their natural habitat. Does that sound like the right message?
Visit national parks, go out for walks and nature walks, but don't go to temples just to see elephants. And Thrissur, like elephant festivals, this and it's some and when you work with these animals, and if you go to places like Sonpur in Bihar, where they have these wildlife and elephant festivals, unfortunately the trade and the things in wildlife and elephants is also linked to the trade in children and women. So there are a lot of similar patterns between exploitation in humans and in animals. So there is, which is not really talked about from that point of view in crime and things. Similarly, One Health, when you talk about animals and diseases in animals, the same diseases also affect humans, which you have, look at COVID, for example. There's a lot of intricate relationships between all these things that, which people aren't really aware about, because you tend to look at it from one perspective, and it'd be nice for people to kind of read up and, take all those perspectives into account.
Thank you so much. This is such an important message. We don't get to hear this kind of message from even if we talk about many conversationists on videos, through many interviews. A very important point, Shantanu. Thank you so much for sharing this. Gaurav,
Someone mentioned something about PETA being able to prevent it. You can prevent it, not PETA. PETA is just one organization, and it's not even an Indian organization. So it's all about just stepping up and getting something done.
Exactly. Yes. So right. In fact, it starts from us. PETA is an organization. Yes, it starts from us. We've been talking about what we can do as as the future is in our hands as well, no doubt. So Gaurav, you've been into the wild, and you've been also a bird watcher. You've watched many birds, and you must have spoken to many birds as well. When you speak to the birds, what they ask you to convey to us? I just thought I should frame this sentence in this way. But anything that you have found as a message from the wild, which we should take, anything on the line of Seva or sustainability, anything that you want to share with us?
So I think a lot of the lessons that we have to learn from the wild, kind of echoing with what Shantanu has said and what Anandji has said. One thing is that we use the word ecosystem, but people don't realize why we use the word ecosystem is because the natural world is indeed a system. We tend to think of it as, just simple things, we cut down. So let's say we cut down trees. All these things have domino effects. Cutting down trees can have an effect on us,
Yes.
which shows up later on. And,
Yes.
we can't think of ourselves as independent from nature. So, and a lot of things that we do, we don't tend to think of the long-term effects. So, I think one thing I would say is, like Shantanu said, read up. We are in the age of the internet, and there's so many resources on the internet. Of course, you will have to check if those
Correct.
resources are, if those resources are
bountiful of resources. Yes.
Yeah, and we have to check if those resources are legitimate.
Yes.
We shouldn't be reading the wrong things. There's a lot of wrong forwards going around on WhatsApp and Facebook and things like that. But it's not very difficult for people to be aware of things. Also, if you want to enjoy animals, enjoy it on the animals' terms and not on your terms. The animals are not there for your entertainment. So,
Bang on.
So, I have seen this so many times where people have, come with me to a national park, and we've seen, we've actually seen things that are harder to see than tigers. We've seen animals that are, more elusive than tigers. But because they didn't see a tiger on their safari, they're disappointed and they say, the whole trip was a waste. I keep trying to tell them, we are in the tiger's home. He's not, he doesn't have a schedule to keep for us. He's not there to, keep his appointment with us.
Yes.
So even when you venture into the wild, let's say you take a safari into the national park, and again, not a place where animals are in captivity, a place actually in the wild. Notice everything around you. Watch the birds. Watch langurs. Langurs are one of the most interesting things to observe. Watch deer. Watch how animals interact with each other. There are so many things you can enjoy when you don't have one specific goal in mind.
What a point. What a point. Lovely. Maza aa gaya is point. And you emphasize on the point that you read up the legitimate sources. Read it to the legitimate sources. I can actually read it from one of the comments actually emphasizing on the point that Rajesh ji has pointed out. There's an entire chapter on how to develop elephant forests and sustain them. That's something which actually makes people go deeper into the aspects of how to really love nature, how to be aligned with them. And when you mentioned about the point of looking other than what we are made to focus on, a tiger or a lion, there is so much happening in the forest. And when we shift our focus from that one thing which we probably may have paid money for, when we shift focus away from that, there is so much joy already in the forest that we are missing out on. So try to understand what you're missing out on, and then you will really open your Jnana Chakshu and whatnot Chakshu into really enjoying the blisses of nature. So rightly
Definitely.
put, Gaurav. Thank you so much for this point as well. And yeah, there is more happening in the forest. Very good. Thank you, Prasadji. Lastly, I wish Anandji also brings about what the younger generation who at times may really want to try to find crux out of the ancient Indian list. Of course, they cannot really get the crux unless they dive deeper into it. But if someone who actually has been diving deeper into the ocean of Indian list, if they want to ask him about how they can take one message away from this session, what you would like to give to those kind of people who are curious but also want to take an inference from the eternal Indian list.
Great. There are 2 points that I like to make. The first one is there are two things which are called as indestructible. One is metals and the second is plastic. And the way we are behaving is we are behaving like Asurs of yesteryears. You see that Asurs did a lot of penance and they used to get a vara to their liking. But once they got the vara, they would be abusing and converting that boon into a curse by overexploitation. So in the same way, we have got these two, metal and plastic, which are indestructible, which should have been a great boon to environment. Because when you are making a pen out of plastic, you are saving a tree by not using wood, not using that carbon or graphite or the natural resource. And this is why, but what we have done is we have taken that plastic and by not recirculating it, we have conveniently converted that boon into a curse. And the whole cycle, which should have been like a plastic should be indestructible and then we should be able to use it for 500 years. But instead of doing that, we are just casting it into the sea or on the dustbin for cows to eat and so on and so forth. And this is something
being caught up in the throat of the fishes.
Yes, exactly. So this is something that we are doing with actually what could have been a boon. We are not doing the same thing with metal because metals are much costlier. So we are recirculating the metals again and again, but we are not doing that same thing with the plastic. So recirculate, at least use it once more. 50% of use would be reduced to that extent. That is the one point. And the second point I like to make, which is somewhat radical, is in our ancient scriptures, languages of wildlife have been described. Pakshi Vidya is there, talking to animals is there, talking to birds is there, birds languages and all those things have been described. And till for quite some time, I used to feel that these are parikalpana. These are just imagination. But I met somebody called as Anandji in Thana. And this person is called as Elephant Whisperer. He talks the language of elephants. And whenever in some zoos and other places, the ailment of the elephant is not understood or the problem of the elephant is not understood, this person is called in and he actually talks to the elephant using some 25 or 30 or 85 sounds. And he understands the problem and explains it to the management. And I would say this is the beginning of human-animal interaction. Let us delve deeper into that ancient wisdom and have a dialogue with not only elephants, maybe at some point of time tigers, maybe at some point of time with cows and buffaloes and whatnot. And have a, I mean, as of now, it will seem totally creative and too much imagination. But I believe if our ancient Rishi Munis used to do it, there should be a way to do it. And Mr. Anand Shinde has shown one way. So it
Yes.
is needed to finance such kind of initiatives and go on this line rather than waiting for something of this sort coming from Western countries to India.
So rightly put, Anandji. I mean, of course, the cow was coming in my mind when you talked about animal communication because of my farmer mind. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense about trying to open a different other channel, many different channels of communication, and it will be astonishing, no doubt about it. There will be so much to learn. Uh, and in fact, we have many kids around us who have been known to be able to do that because of their purer minds. We've seen that many a times. A couple of them are actually the kids of the members present in this room also right now. And it is astonishing, a world of communicating at different channels through different languages. And when you mentioned about Anand Shindeji, it makes us all the more curious to learn about him a little more now. So thank you so much for bringing his name into it and the thoughts that you're talking about.
I was going to make a point though with animal
Yes.
communicators. Unfortunately, a lot of it is farcical, and there's been a lot of people out there making a lot of money, claiming to be communicating with animals, like
Yeah. Which
long
is why
distance
Anandji
calls.
mentioned it as this could be a radical thought. This could sound like a thought which
Yeah,
could
so
create a lot of conjecture. It is
but
understandable. Yeah.
and I unfortunately seen a lot of trauma and this thing attached to people who claim to be these communicators, and so I would take a lot of this with the communication part specifically, and people claiming that they can talk to these animals the way that they it's portrayed. It can be taken with a pinch of salt. Sometimes it's it's pretty it's spraying on people's emotions, unfortunately. So
Yes, yes. Pointed. Like Anandji also mentioned, it could be a point which it's slightly still under study or under the conjecture, the way it is seen with mostly. The point take,
I would put it this way, that we are so asuric that there is no system that we have left to abuse. So in the same way, doesn't matter what comes in, even if Amrut comes down to us, we are going to commercialize it in some way. And there are going to be one or two genuine and maybe hundreds who are not genuine. So that is the rule of the Kali Yuga. That is what we say. And as I fully agree with him, that if there is one genuine person, there could be 100 charlatans. But that is the way it is, as of now.
I was going to say, Amrit makes a great whiskey.
Yes, yes.
Superb. Amazing discussion, gentlemen. Maza aa gaya, seriously. And we already have a few questions actually coming from participants. In fact, if it is okay, I would actually like to, mention one question from Mehul. Mehul actually this is a question? This could be a question to Shantanu, but I'm happy to have it, rooted to Gaurav also if you would like to throw some light on that.
Yeah.
But anyone between Shantanu and Gaurav. What are your thoughts on human-animal relation, more from the domesticated pets point of view? Secondly, the stray dogs population, stray population of the dogs and the way humans treat the situation. Partly, this has been kind of raised by Anandji already, but anything that you have observed peculiarly about these?
Gaurav, you want to answer that, or should I?
Okay, so the stray dog thing, it's a very controversial opinion I have. A lot of people are not going to like me for this opinion, but there are times where I've seen, I wouldn't say stray dogs on the road, but feral dogs in wildlife areas that cause great harm to wildlife. I've seen, near Ahmedabad, I've seen uh, dogs hunting nilgai. I've seen photos of dogs attacking snow leopards up in the mountains and things like that. So, stray dogs is a very controversial topic. I do think we need to have a love for animals, but uh, our love has to end somewhere, and we have to look at practicality for some things. So,
That's quite a thought coming in.
Well,
Shantanu, any point that you would like to stress on this?
So two things. One was so why we have so many stray dogs is actually one of the reasons that, like, in historical reasons why we have more dogs right now is because veterinarians kind of created a situation, that allowed the numbers to boom. Diclofenac, I think, was one of the biggest causes of it. We wiped out vultures, several, over the last few decades. And so there's a lot more food being dumped on the streets that's not being consumed. Our unfortunately, systems in cities don't exist to take care of our waste. And there is a lot of feeding and a lot of waste being done, food waste that's being done that leads to this problem. And until we look and work on solid waste, until we work on our solid waste management practices at a municipal level, you're never going to be able to deal with stray dog numbers, as they are. ABC programs, like where you're sterilizing them, works to an extent, but if you have a constantly increasing number, it's very difficult to cut that off. So as individuals, if you have dogs in your neighborhood, please get them sterilized. Get like your local NGO, animal NGO, to come in, like your Blue Cross in Pune, your Rescue, all these organizations where you can, and because what that does is it keeps the numbers low, and it also prevents outside further like dogs from coming in to the area, so you don't have as many cases of dog attacks and rabies and things. So take care of the animals around you, and you won't have to deal with it. Feral dogs are a problem for sure with wildlife, but then again, it is because of bad solid waste management practices in peripheral villages. So you'll see feral dogs in areas like near Ahmedabad, or where they're going into Ghúryé, or because of Porbandar and the proximity of cities and urban areas to these forests. But you don't see that many problems, say in a Bandipur, where there's not that many villages, or the villages don't have that many dogs in them, because, well, for example, we run the ABC programs in that stretch of in parts of stretches of Bandipur, and you don't see that much conflict with these animals as you would see in other forests like Ranthambore and that sort of thing, where you don't have solid waste management and you don't have ABC programs as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, sorry if I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time, but
no problem.
So the diclofenac thing, I won't go into the details. Anyone can Google Asian vulture crisis or Indian vulture crisis, and you'll get all the details. But it's what I was saying earlier about the domino effect. Our need to ease suffering in cattle has led to an increase in stray dogs, and this is not one step, it is several steps that have dominoes that have fallen. I totally agree with Shantanu that the problem of feral dogs is a problem that we have created because of our lack of solid waste management. And uh, it's someone had mentioned about Peter. Shantanu said, why can't you do anything about it? I totally agree. No step is small. I know we all go to places like Singapore and everything and praise how clean the roads are, and then we come back home and later the first chance we get. And one person littering, one person thinks it's just me. But if 1 million people think, oh, it's just me, I'm just one person, that is 1 million people creating their own waste.
That's quite a bird eye view provided by the two of you, because I mean, I would have thought simple that maybe this is because we have been abandoning them. We have not been fascinated by the stray dogs, which are generally the Indian breeds, and we've been asking for more of the foreign breeds to come in. That would have been my thought. But yeah, this is even more logical, more in-depth. So for all of us who have been thinking about the reasons and how to help them, I think the way forward is being given by Shantanu and Gaurav brilliantly. Thank you so much for this. A few other questions also, if I may be able to ask now with a limited time. about, it's kind of a connected question to this one. What would you say to the small pet lovers, especially dogs who get them in and then abandon them?
I was just about to answer that as in a message, but it's reprehensible. But unfortunately, when you like looking at trends and movies that depict animals, and we were talking about how the idea of keeping these pets is romanticized. Everyone wants, dogs because of the movies they watch and the media that's available. Like when the Vodafone ad came out with that pug, I think pug ownership went up 87%. There was some crazy number of those things, but then abandonment of those pugs went up as well, because they're very difficult to take care of. Most of them have a lot of genetic issues. The brachycephalic, because they have the things, they can't breathe properly. They have bad hips, bad backs. Anandji was talking about German shepherds being, obese and things, because people have bred them to have sloping backs, so they all end up with hip dysplasia and all kinds of issues there. It's great for vets, gives us a lot of revenue, but it's terrible. Unfortunately, this whole breeding thing really needs to stop. There are standards that are to be followed, but nobody does follow them. So if you have a pet at home, please make sure to operate it and don't let it breed further. You have no idea what will happen to those puppies in future generations. They might go to somebody's home where they might take care of it well, but they might not as well. So the one thing you can do is, if you've got a pet, please operate. It'll also reduce the chances of your pet being stolen for breeding. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens when you board dogs, unfortunately, in this country. Unfortunately, there's a lot of standards that could be maintained which aren't. But start by working with your own environment. Make sure you take care of the animals that you have there. But yeah, unfortunately, abandoning pets is a pain. Like, somebody just dropped off 3 golden retrievers at our boarding kennel at the gate just this morning. So if you guys would like to adopt animals, please let me know.
Which is why we get so many messages about these have been left out or abandoned. So anyone for adoption or stuff like that.
Yeah,
we get your message. Thank you, Shantanu, for this. There was also a question slightly earlier in the session, so this question may have been answered already a little, but this question is from Rohan, and probably we can take this one as the last one and then we'll close. How about view on jungle safaris, being in national parks all over? Are they a bit too many, where animals have gotten used to the normal human beings, or is there too many human beings population actually going to the national park? Is that also a kind of a concern for those who are those who are watching the national parks and what is happening to them? I think this question could first be answered by, of course, Gaurav and Shantanu, and either of you two could come up, but I think Gaurav could answer this first.
So I would agree. Yes, there is a lot of jungle safaris that are going on. It's not the ideal thing to do, but luckily we do have a lot of rules in place. Most national parks are closed during the monsoon, when animals are breeding or mating. Also, there is always a limit on the number of vehicles that can enter. There's a limit on what time they can be in the forest. There's a limit on what route they can take. So there are a lot of rules in place. So it's not as bad as many people may think it is. But unfortunately, I would say yes, there is a lot, but I would say that it's also the best awareness tool I can think of to educate the common man, short of documentaries and films. So
there could be a good balance between the two.
Yeah, there is a balance. Maybe the balance has not been reached, but we need to get there, and it's something that should not end, but it can be better managed.
Good point. Superbly put. Aptly put. Thank you so much, Gaurav. Shantanu, you also have been going into Bandipur many a times, and for about 3.5 years, you were there looking at rescue operations. Any specific points on this from your side?
I was in Bandipur 3.5 years. I never saw a tiger on a calm, chill day. Even though I drove down that tiger road up and down like every day, I only saw them when I had to capture them and they were killing people, and it was not fun. I think Gaurav was talking about, when you go into forest, there's so much other stuff to see. And I completely agree with that. I would say, when you're going into a forest, just keep your, eyes and ears open. There's a lot more things to see and do than just, those keystone species, right?
That way you can maybe enjoy even without a jungle safari also. That could also be the place. I mean, jungle safaris are basically designed for showing a particular animal.
Yeah,
that's what message they carry.
There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of very small initiatives that have a lot of initiatives. Like in Bombay, for example, there's an organization that takes people out on coastal on tidal pool walks.
Yeah, there's quite a few now. Yeah,
Marine Life of Mumbai was the first one. I don't know about any new ones. But then there was a person who used to take people on tours of Bangalore to show them the different species of ants, which was, pretty interesting. It was
interesting, yeah.
And so there's a lot of smaller initiatives by naturalists and zoologists that, that are quite interesting if you just look it up.
Lovely.
Beyond the, someone asked volunteer programs. We have a few volunteer programs with our Kundapur and our Andaman project. So we have a coral restoration project, but you need to be a diver if you're going to be volunteering there, and they're paid volunteer programs. But if you'd like to help out and stuff, we are, if you're in Goa or on the coast and you see a marine animal in distress or something that's washed up, please let us know, and we'd love to help you out. And if you have stray dogs and you need help with an individual animal that you see, an accident case, and you need assistance on what can be done, that sort of thing, you can always call our helpline at which is available on our website at supertails.com. So we give free veterinary advice to people for stray dogs, and or if you need help with your pets as well. So yeah.
Lovely, super. Lovely to have all three of you, Gaurav, Shantanu, and Anandji. In fact, we have traversed what many layers of topics in this small piece of time, and the discussion, I mean, I don't really want to end this discussion, to be honest. We have talked about how doing Seva to whether elephants or even marine creatures is something that is becoming a part, because so many manipulation and destruction of environment we only have caused. We discussed about what sustainability for the local communities living in the wild is actually, and how that is important for the nature to survive rather than hotels and resorts. We learned about how metals and plastics have been kind of, erections from us, our side only, and we have been creating them for our enjoyment, but with also exploiting nature. Interestingly, this year's environment message from the World Environment Day also was beat plastic pollution. A lot of this has been going into the water, has been thrown into the wild also by many of us. It's being eaten by the domesticated pets even. Message is clear to us. Let us undo. Let us undo what we are doing. And let us also let nature take control rather than we trying to control it. This way, there will be less rescuing required and more, thriving and enjoying it. There will be less firefighting and more value creation. So thank you so much, Anandji, Shantanuji, and Gauravji for being here. I mean, once again saying that, I mean, with your wisdom, it was difficult to, cover this topic in this 1.5 hours. And we would like to know more about you, talk to you more basically in future. I hope we get more chance to do that. So over to you, Upasana, to bring the session to a conclusion.
I'm quite speechless, and I think there was so much to learn in just 1.5 hours. Chitrat, big thanks to you, because in the beginning of the session, I was really curious to know how eternal Indian wisdom will be with, the people who are working on ground, and how it will be with what is happening today. But you have done it very beautifully. It has actually naturally come out very beautifully, and you have put it in words very nicely. Thank you for that. Dr. Shantanu, Anandji, Gauravji, how much wisdom do you guys have? It's brilliant. I think Chitrat has already spoken about the takeaways, and we are already at 8:30. So I would like to close the session with our Shanti mantra. Before that, I would also like to thank Chiranjeev Gurukul community and the Sammelan team, who is doing everything behind the camera and behind the curtains. That's Amita, Vinaya, Aditi, Minakshi, and big thanks to Rajesh, who drives us, who motivates us to bring all such amazing things in front of you guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the audience for being there, for your amazing questions, and for such great energy. So here we close down with our Shanti mantra. Please, everyone, close your eyes. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dhanyavad, everyone.